the goal is to continue to keep you as independent as possible with assistance as you need it. So the staff cannot tell you, or they're not going to tell you, you have to go to this and you have to do that. That is not what assisted living is. We will suggest things, and there's opportunity for you to do things or not.
Welcome to Aging in Style with Theresa Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Theresa Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. Today, we are talking about assisted living. And if you regularly listen to the podcast, you know we've talked about assisted living before, the benefits, what's included, all that kind of information. I've also hit on some of the usual type myths that we hear about, which I'm going to mention those again right now. But after I do that, we are going to get into talking about a little bit more obscure type myths that we don't think about. So kind of the top myths that people have about assisted living. And these are when people call me for placement, because that's what my actual business is placing people, helping them find independent assisted memory care homes, whatever is right for them. But these are the questions I get all the time. One, the assumption is that assisted living is paid by Medicare, and it is not. It is private pay, and we've talked about that before. We'll link you to, I think we have one called Paying for Senior Living, something like that, but we'll link it in the show notes. Assisted living is just a nursing home, and no, it is not. There are some absolutely beautiful assisted livings that I would gladly move into. Another myth we hear is, actually, this one always makes me laugh, it's only for old people, and it's usually someone in their 90s who tell us that. We also hear I don't need help yet, so I don't need to move. That's a pretty common one. And then also these two. I won't be able to bring my pet, which we've covered that on the podcast before too, that yes, you can bring your cat or dog. There are some limitations on the size of the animal, just depending on, each community. And then I'll have to give up my car. And that, again, is another myth. You don't have to give up your car. I mean, as long as you're still able to drive, passing your test, your vision's good, all the stuff, then there's no reason for you to give that up. So we are going to talk, as I said, about some of the more obscure myths that maybe you have thought about or haven't thought about. And I have the right person on the podcast today to help with those myths and sort of debunk them. So I have Theresa Williams, who is a sales director at Rambling Oaks, which is in Highland Village. It's an assisted living community, and she's been there for 8 years, and I know she's heard it all. So welcome, Theresa.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's talk about myths. So the ones that I just mentioned, yes, you've heard all of those, I'm sure. But what are kind of some different ones, a little more obscure? What are some that you've heard?
One that I've heard is the food is bad. And in my particular community, we have chefs. We have chefs that have been there for quite some time. And we actually specialize for gluten, celiac. There are lots of things that we can do in the kitchen. And if someone has a special something that they like, we'll actually keep it in the kitchen. Now, for other communities, I think that food, everyone knows it's a big important part to what people really enjoy. It's part of their socialization, and they want the food to be good. So,
and the other thing is, no one is going to be, especially no older woman, is ever completely happy with the food because, you don't make the meatloaf or whatever it is, how they made it for 40 years or whatever. So it's hard to make everyone happy, and there will be people. Do you find that you have, that's not how I did my fried chicken?
Yes. Surprisingly, a lot of things are made from scratch in our kitchen, but still, you're not going to make everyone happy. You're absolutely right.
But y'all do a good job of making most people happy, and that's all you can really strive for. And I have had the food at Rambling Oaks, and it was fantastic, everything I've ever had there. The other thing that I think is different for you and kind of bust another myth is people are worried about having to eat at set times on a schedule.
Yes, we have all-day dining. So some of the facilities have that same concept, but for my particular facility, you can eat at any time of the day. Some prefer to eat a little later. Some can get up and eat right away at 7 a.m. and we have several menus to choose from. You can do a daily special or you can choose from an entree menu. Just depends on what your choices are.
And I think that's an important difference and something good that your community does. And there are others that do that as well. But I have had people say to me, listen, Lori, I am not getting up at 7 in the morning to go eat breakfast. I'm sleeping in until 10 or 11 and fair enough. I get that. I would want to sleep in too. So I think that's a nice benefit that your community offers. What are some other myths that you have to bust?
Well, my community, or a lot of the assisted living communities, are how I reference to a senior living apartment complex with assistance as needed. So your apartment is your apartment. And a lot of people feel like they won't be able to come in and make it their own. Most places allow, particularly mine, you can hang pictures, bring all of your furniture pieces, decorate it to the way that makes you feel most comfortable. In fact, I encourage families to do so because having pictures of your family and your photographs of any kind and the decorations that you had in your own home brings a sense of comfort to feeling like home. So
can you paint the walls too?
Absolutely, you can. You can paint the walls, hang TVs on the walls. We want it to be made like it's your home, and it is your apartment. It is your home.
Absolutely. Oh, here's an important one. Okay, so, and this would be me. Can you drink wine?
You absolutely can. Again, it's your apartment. It's your home. And we have residents that order groceries out and they're delivered to them directly. So I see a lot of wine bottles and some beers going down the hallways in the Walmart bags. So again, apartment complex with assistance as needed. This is their home, their space, and they have what they want delivered to it.
Now, I would guess, just kind of make a disclaimer that if they're on certain medications where they can't drink, then that is noted.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. If we're doing med management, we don't allow just to see something laying around the room that the nurse is not aware of.
So they have to clear that with the nurse.
Yes.
Do you do mostly medication management in your assisted living? Because some assisted livings require that they do the medication management.
We do not do all medications because we have people that live there independently whom still drive, and they just have a few deficits that they need assistance with. But what we require is if you are deemed appropriate by your doctor, that you are still able to manage your medications. The doctor writes an order and states that you can indeed manage your own meds, then yes, you can manage your meds. But we have to have an order by the doctor to provide us with that information that you can manage that.
Okay. What about the myth, because I get this one, once I move in, I can never leave. Sort of like Hotel California. You can never check out. Is that true?
For my community, no. We are not a lockdown. And if you're not in a lockdown community, which is more of a memory care environment,
yes.
Yeah, mm-hmm. You come and go. You go with your family, you spend the weekend, you go on vacation. If you still drive, you go to the senior center, you do all the things that you did when you were living independently. Yet you have the safety and security of knowing that there is someone available 24 hours, 7 days a week that can help you with your needs if needed.
So when someone does leave, so they live in your community, do they need to sign out just to let someone know that they're leaving?
Yes. Then the reason we require that is because if we have a fire or something that we need to make sure people are safe and in the building or out of the building, if you didn't sign out, we're looking for you, we'll panic to know, my goodness, we don't know where Miss So-and-so is and we have an emergency. So that would be the only reason we would want to know who is in the building and who is out of the building.
Okay. What are some other obscure myths that you can think of that you've had to tell people, nope?
Only for old people.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
Well, I have little 90-year-old beautiful women that are like, there's a lot of old people here. Well, there may be, but we have people ranging from late 60s to 101 in our community, and reasons are for the ADLs, active daily living, that younger person may require and still have total mental cognitive ability, but yet their physical body has declined and they still need the assistance. So.
We were talking about one earlier that you mentioned, and it kind of made me giggle a little bit, but the dating scene.
Oh, yes. When we talked about doing this podcast, I was thinking out of the box, what are some things that are positive actually for the actual resident moving in? And I came up with a fun little list of things. One is a peaceful environment, no more drama from the families. Sometimes when you live at home with a son or daughter or family, it can get a little tense at times and you feel like they're maybe trying to be a little bossy and tell you what to do. This gives you the peace and the security that you need and still have your independence. And another one was, it's a good dating opportunity. You can be with people that are like-minded. My particular community has a ratio of gentlemen and women, but more gentlemen, surprisingly, than most. And we have had some love connections in our community. It's just a nice opportunity to have male-female companionship to dine with and maybe go out to eat when we go out to eat, and shopping at Walmart, those types of things. And also to be the life of the party. When we do have things in our community, a lot of times they're related to bands and music and a lot of lively things. And there's dancing and lots of friends to make, and gives you the opportunity to make new friends and enjoy the socialization aspect of it.
And you don't have to worry about driving home when it's dark or you had a glass of wine.
Yes.
You just walk back to your apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that also, what you said about the families and having peace, because, sometimes there's a lot of arguing whether you live in your own home still or you're with your kids, that, everyone's like, your family's wanting the best for you. And so maybe you're feeling all that strife that you're maybe denying it or whatever, not wanting to make the move. So once that finally happens, that I feel like, and you may agree with this, Theresa, but when I worked in independent and assisted living, I had so many people say to me, oh, I wish I had done this sooner. Do you get that too?
I get families saying that they should have done this sooner because at the time they needed the assistance, and perhaps maybe they were a fall risk and they indeed did fall and went to skilled nursing and didn't recover as quickly as they thought, and sometimes don't even make it to assisted living to have that enrichment of the years that could have been, prevented to that fall, possibly. So,
yeah, the falls are always the game changer. But yeah, I think just people in general tend to wait a little bit too long. It's a couple of things. It's one, the older adult not wanting to make a move because they have all these ideas, these different myths going on, that we are taking care of those myths today, debunking them. But also, sometimes the older adult children, they don't want to rock the boat sometimes, or they're not sure how to approach it with mom and dad. And I think that's where myself and Theresa, assisted livings at other communities can help, because we see this every day and we know how to help people move along and why it is a benefit to them to move into senior living. Mm-hmm. So any other myths that we need to debunk? I think you mentioned one about, I won't see my family anymore if I move.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the community is open for you to go and spend time with your children or your grandchildren, and they're not being your care provider anymore. So we're being your care provider, and you can go and enjoy, or they can come and visit you in your home. And it's something that is good for everybody, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I know most senior living communities, and I know for a fact that your community does this well, you do events to include the family, invite them up there. So like you did Thanksgiving, was it Thanksgiving dinner? Because one of my friends moved her mother to Theresa's community, and she said the food was delicious. They all came up and enjoyed it, and she said it was a feast. Was that Thanksgiving? All right.
We do Christmas, we do Mother's Day, we do the special events, and it's a big dining, like over 200 people, because we set tables for the resident and their family members. So it could be up to 10 people at one table. And just to make it extra special for them, and them to actually get that holiday feeling if they don't want to go out anymore. Because some of our residents don't want to go out. It's more disruptive for them to go out and be with family than to be there and let family come and see them.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a nice way to include all generations, and also this to prove that this is their home. And so it's just another part of their home in the dining room, and family members all get to be a part of it.
Another thing is the staff will control my daily routine. Well, the goal is to continue to keep you as independent as possible with assistance as you need it. So the staff cannot tell you, or they're not going to tell you, you have to go to this and you have to do that. That is not what assisted living is. We will suggest things, and there's opportunity for you to do things or not.
So if you want to stay in your apartment and only go have your meals, then that's okay. But if you are a social butterfly and you want to go to arts and crafts and out on outings and things, then you can do that. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do. Some communities, or most communities, do want everyone to come out for meals because you're getting that important socialization piece of it. Sometimes if you've been sick or you're out with family and you miss a meal, you can have a meal brought to your apartment. Or if you're sick, but y'all don't encourage that, right? You want people to come out as much as possible.
We do. We absolutely do. Just because even just out of your room, if you're walking or you're in a wheelchair, it's getting you in a different environment. It's breaking up that feeling of isolation, and you're hearing and seeing other people. Even if you want to sit alone, that's okay too. It's just getting you in a different environment and allowing you to socialize if you want. Because a lot of our people sit at table and they're very dear friends. You know, they're very attached. They share a lot of things and stories and friendships. And that's the most important time that they do that, because they're all together at that time.
Any other myths that you can think of, or have we covered? We've covered a lot of myths here, because I think that a lot of times people, they see assisted living not as a positive. They see it sort of as a negative. And I'm going to say maybe they see it sort of like this is the end of their life, and it brings kind of a sense of fear. So I think that's part of it. But what I think people don't understand about assisted living, and I feel like a lot of people are waiting longer than they used to. And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, because moving to assisted living, it's going to possibly extend your years, because of you're going to have good nutrition, you're going to have socialization, if you're not able to get this in your home, but it'll give you a better quality as well. Because a lot of times we talk to seniors who are maybe not eating good, they are not getting out much. We've also seen hoarding as an issue. I think we were going to hit on that one too. What are you seeing with that, Theresa?
Well, that is something that the families usually come and say, oh my goodness, we don't know what to do. Mom or dad is in this situation where they're in their place and it's just become overwhelming. They can't even function in their own space because of this situation.
With all the stuff.
The stuff. And it's a danger, it's a fall risk, and it's not something that happened overnight. So there's a lot of emotion that goes behind that, of being totally overwhelmed. One, the family has to deal with it and figure out what to do with all the stuff. And two, moving someone out of that environment and into an assisted living environment can be certainly overwhelming, but definitely in their best interest, because the idea would be to minimalize their environment and make it safe for them. It's clean, maybe a new start for them to where they don't have this feeling of being stuck or can't do anything, paralyzed. Those are all things that come along with that. We see some of this with alcoholism. There's sometimes situations where the potential resident is having some drinking. It's not being controlled. And sometimes this is a little more in depth with a rehab situation, but getting them in an environment like ours where it's not necessarily controlled, but the family has a little bit more control because potentially they're starting to manage finances, or they can see at least how the finances, they've gotten more involved in their lives. And again, we allow the drinking, so there is a fine line there, but at least there is a good start and a fresh new start and a little bit more to monitor in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend. Like, have you ever had that issue? No, I'm just thinking about that, where they were still ordering alcohol in.
Yes.
How do you manage something like that?
We usually have to get the family involved, and then we can't have the disruptive behavior, which we have had because we're very protective of our other residents. This is their home. So usually it ends up, if there's not group effort to try to figure this out, maybe they're not a good fit for us, because we have to consider a lot of things in this situation, like our other residents, our care, their safety. So, yes.
And I think also with the hoarding piece of it, I think, I don't know stats on this. It'd be kind of an interesting podcast, so maybe we need to do one on hoarding too. But I do see an uptick in it, because I don't remember, I've been doing this over 18 years, and I don't remember people talking much about hoarding, but I'm hearing more and more the last few years. And maybe it's just something that people have given a name to now, so maybe that's why they talk more about it. But there's a lot of embarrassment about it, a lot of, I don't want to deal with it because it is overwhelming and a lot to deal with. But there are services out there that can help you. I think they consider it like a biohazard. So you do have to have like certain services that can come in and clear out depending on how bad it has gotten. But you don't have to do this alone, is what I'm saying. There are people that can help you once you get your loved one into a safe assisted living environment. Dead silence.
Oh, gosh.
Is there anything else?
You mentioned something about environment. Some people, allergies and chemical sensitivity. Assisted livings tend to be a bit more conscientious about those types of things. For cleaning purposes, like we can only use certain type of cleaners in the environment, and it's for this exact reason. It's a controlled environment in this way to provide safer and more comfortable some even have filtration systems in their community to control this type of thing, any type of sensitivity to allergies. And so that's
another plus. Yeah. Okay. Here's another, it's a myth, but it's not always a myth, if that makes sense. But people think assisted living is way too expensive. And for some people, yes, it is going to be way too expensive and beyond their budget. But there are ways to pay for assisted living that many people don't know about. And we have covered that on other podcasts. But I would say you've probably had people come in and they're just like, there's no way I can afford this. And when you explained, ways that they can fund it, they could afford it, right?
Yes. It's hard to think, when you're living independently, you've got all the bills, the utilities, the food, the maintenance of a home. And that's not the case in assisted living. So when you're in assisted living, everything's consolidated. You have your housing, your food, your utility, your caregiving, they're all included. So normally there is the top price because there's usually the base price, and then there's a, depending on your choice of room, and then there's a level of care. But even with the fullest level of care and then whatever apartment you were to choose, many times when you add all that up to what the current situation is, if you're living independently in your own home, is very similar with the care that you're needing, or someone in a situation that's trying to live at home independently and is still having caregivers come to their home at a very expensive hourly rate. When you add that up, it certainly comes out a lot of times to be less expensive in that way.
That is true, because caregiving it's expensive to have a caregiver in your home. And then you also have, caregivers are human. If someone gets sick and they can't come, then you're kind of in a pickle there to make sure that you have someone there, especially if you're really depending on that care, if your mobility, or some other issue, dementia, whatever it may be. Other expenses that we don't think about, there's kind of, I don't want to call them hidden expenses, but we don't sit around thinking every day, like what it's going to cost to what we're paying for our home insurance, our car insurance, to, I'm just thinking of my own here, what I'm spending every month getting someone to come take care of my pool because I don't know how to take care of it and I don't want to. Do your lawn. What about, a storm and now you've got to replace your roof. So there's all those things that truly add up. And if you put pen to paper, you might be really surprised to see how much you're spending. I've actually done that, and it's not a good feeling. Property taxes, all the things, and here in Texas, property taxes are really expensive. So you just have to think about all of those things when you're considering what it's going to cost you to go to assisted living and if it's the right move for you.
Correct. What I think is when families present to their loved one, why don't we look at assisted living? The first thing I think that goes through the person's mind is a skilled nursing environment, like a nursing home.
Like a 1970s era.
Immediately thinking of walking into a smelly place. There's beeping all around. There's a hospital bed in a black room.
And the smell of urine everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's really not that way in an assisted living environment. It is more home, and people have a lot of freedoms. It's just having that extra care as keeping you as independent as possible.
Mm-hmm. And that's the whole point. The extra care is so you can be independent. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. Well, Theresa, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And hopefully this will help people who are just, kind of buying into all these myths. I hope we hit them all. If y'all have a question or a myth that we did not think about, send me a message. Just go to my website, which is loriwilliams-seniorservices.com. You can send me a message there, and we're happy to answer that. And also, please share this podcast and all of our podcast episodes with your friends and family and neighbors, whoever, just get the word out there. We are just trying to educate more and more people about aging and about senior living. So thanks for tuning in. And thank you, Theresa.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.